Okay, so it is Tuesday, February 17th, 2026.
Mm.
And if you have been anywhere near, I don't know, a group chat, a social media timeline this morning, you already know the vibe. There is a very um, specific kind of electricity in the air right now.
Oh, yeah, you can feel it. It's palpable.
It really is. We are staring down the barrel of one of the most, I'd say, aggressive cinematic weekends we've seen in a long time. I mean, you've got the pre-sales for the dreadful crashing apps left and right.
Total chaos.
Total chaos. Then you have the early buzz for Hokum starting to trickle out. And, just generally, it feels like half the world is getting ready to go sit in the dark room and get scared out of their minds.
It really feels like a convergence point for the genre, a massive moment.
It does. It really does. But before we get into the showtimes and, the popcorn and all the specific reviews, and we're going to do all of that for sure, I want to pull the emergency brake for just a second. I want to start with a question that has been just gnawing at me while I was prepping this whole stack. It's a contradiction that I think everyone listening has probably felt, even they haven't, put a name to it.
I love a good contradiction. What's on your mind?
It's the logic of the thing. Okay, think about the last time you were truly deeply in the hole. And I'm not talking about like a bad hair day. I'm talking about grief.
Right.
I'm talking about a breakup that felt like a limb was amputated, or a bereavement, or just that crushing, heavy feeling that the world is fundamentally broken.
The kind of state where you can barely get off the couch, where everything just feels gray.
Exactly. Now, if we were operating on pure logic, if human beings were just rational algorithms, what would you watch in that state? You'd watch, I don't know, Ted Lasso. You'd watch a rom-com.
Something comforting.
Right. You'd watch Blue Skies and people falling in love and problems that get solved in 22 minutes plus commercials. You would seek a dopamine hit to counteract all the cortisol.
That's the classic theory of hedonic motivation, right? We seek pleasure, we avoid pain. It's like the basic operating system of biology.
Right. And here is the paradox that's been bugging me. Look at the data. I mean, just look at human behavior. When we are at our lowest, when we feel the most vulnerable and raw, a huge percentage of us, we turn off the lights, we pull up the blanket, and we put on a horror movie.
We do.
We watch monsters, we watch survival situations, we watch people being hunted. We essentially pay money to feel fear when our own lives are already terrifying. Why? Why do we do that?
It is the paradox of horror, and it's probably the single most interesting knot to untangle in all of media psychology.
So that is our mission for today. We aren't just doing movie reviews. We are going to try to solve this riddle. We're going to unpack the function of fear. We need to figure out why right now, in 2026, we seem to need monsters more than ever to process our actual reality.
And we have a stack today that is, honestly, it's perfect for this. It's this great mix of high-level theory and very, very immediate pop culture.
It's a dense one for sure. We're anchoring this whole deep dive with a fascinating, I'll admit, pretty heavy academic paper from Emotion Review. It's called Horror Films and Grief. So if you haven't read it, don't worry, we've dissected it for you.
We did the homework.
We did. And then we're going to apply all that theory to three very specific pieces of media. First, we've got the dreadful, the big one, the Game of Thrones reunion with Sophie Turner and Kit Harington. That's dropping this Friday, February 20th.
Can't wait for that one.
Then we have Hokum, which hits in May. And finally, we have this really unsettling interview with the author Paul Tremblay about his upcoming book, Dead But Dreaming of Electric Sheep.
So you've got the theory, and then you have a case study in folklore, one in history and one in near-future technology. It's a perfect storm.
It is. And by the end of this, I want to promise you listening one thing. You are going to look at the monster under your bed a little differently. You might not want to, hug him, but you might at least want to buy him a beer and ask how his day was.
Okay, let's maybe not humanize the monsters too much, but I definitely take your point.
All right, let's get into the weeds then. We have to start with the theory, because without the framework, the movies are they're just entertainment. This paper, it tackles that paradox of horror head on. Walk us through the traditional understanding of this, because this debate goes back a few decades, right?
Oh, it does. I mean, you could argue it goes back to Aristotle and Catholicism, really, but in modern cinema terms, we usually look at people like Noel Carroll in 1990 and Barry's Gout in 1993. They were the ones who really laid out the problem as a set of three simple premises.
Okay, lay them on me.
Premise one, horror produces fear and disgust.
Okay, easy enough. That's the point.
Premise two, fear and disgust are, by their nature, unpleasant emotions.
Right. Nobody likes to feel disgusted or afraid.
And premise three, audiences enjoy horror. They seek it out.
And therein lies the rub. If premises 1 and 2 are true, if horror creates bad feelings, and bad feelings are, bad, then premise 3 shouldn't exist. We shouldn't enjoy it. It should be like paying to touch a hot stove.
Precisely. And for years, people tried to explain it away. Carol tried to solve it by saying it's about curiosity, that we endure the fear just to get the answers, to see the monster revealed. But that doesn't really hold up, does it?
No, because we rewatch horror movies all the time. If it was just about finding out who the killer is, you'd never watch Scream a second time.
Exactly. I've seen Alien maybe 20 times. I know where the alien is. I know what it looks like. The curiosity is gone, but I'm still watching, still feeling that dread.
So the old explanation doesn't work. What's the new one?
Well, the modern research, including this paper, it basically attacks the second premise. It says, hold on, is fear always negative? And the answer is no. It depends entirely on your stance towards it. A psychologist named Katerina Bantinaki calls this the welcome stance.
The welcome stance. That sounds like a yoga position.
It's a cognitive position, yeah. The idea is when you walk into a movie theater or you open a scary book, you are signing a kind of mental contract. You are saying, I'm inviting these sensations in for a limited time.
Okay.
You aren't actually being chased by a bear in the woods. You are watching a simulation of a bear in a completely controlled environment. And that context, that safety, it changes the entire chemical nature of the emotion.
It's the difference between a roller coaster and a car crash. The G-force might be similar, but in one, you know the safety bar is locked, you know the ride has an end.
Exactly. That's a perfect analogy. But this new paper takes it a step further. They aren't just talking about general thrill-seeking. They are connecting this specifically to grief. And this is where we need to slow down and really unpack a concept they use called the assumptive world.
The assumptive world. I love this term. It sounds like a sci-fi dimension, but it's actually, 1980s psychology?
It is. It was coined by a psychiatrist, Colin Murray Parks, in 1988. And it's just a brilliant way to describe how we function day to day. Basically, we all have a map in our heads, a set of totally taken for granted beliefs about how the universe operates.
Like what?
Well, I assume gravity will hold me to the floor. I assume my car will start when I turn the key. I assume that the sun will rise tomorrow. And on a deeper level, I assume that if I'm generally a good person, tragedy won't just strike me out of nowhere for no reason.
It's the background operating system of your life. We don't
Yeah.
think about it. We just live on top of it.
We have to. It's a cognitive shortcut.
Yeah.
If you had to consciously calculate the probability of the roof collapsing every single time you walked into a room, you'd be paralyzed.
Yeah.
You'd never get anything done. The assumptive world is our safety bubble. It lets us function.
And grief
Yeah.
is what happens when that bubble gets popped.
Grief shatters the bubble. And I think this is what people who haven't been through a profound loss don't quite get. Grief isn't just sadness. Sadness is an emotion that exists within the world. Grief is the destruction of the world itself.
Wow. Say more about that.
When someone you love dies, especially if it's sudden or when you face a massive trauma, your internal map just stops matching the territory. The rules you thought were true are proven false.
The street signs are all wrong. The laws of physics don't seem to apply anymore. You thought you were safe and you found out you weren't. You thought they would always be there and now they aren't.
Exactly. You are suddenly navigating a completely alien landscape. You are spatially and cognitively lost. And this right here is where the connection to horror becomes this massive aha moment. Think about the structure of almost every single horror movie ever made.
Normalcy, disruption, and then chaos.
Right. A horror movie always begins with an established, assumptive world. The family moves into the nice new house, the teenagers go to the idyllic cabin in the woods, the scientists land on the new planet. They all have a map of how they think things work. And then what happens?
The monster arrives.
The monster arrives. And the monster is the agent of disruption. The monster's entire job is to prove that the map is wrong.
A monster says, you thought the dead stayed dead? You were wrong. Or you thought your home was your safe castle? Wrong again.
You thought science and reason could explain everything. You were wrong. The monster is the embodiment of a shattered worldview.
So when a grieving person sits down and watches a horror movie, they aren't seeing escapism. They're seeing realism.
They are seeing what the paper calls cognitive mirroring. That's the key term here. If you are deep in grief and you go watch a romantic comedy, the dissonance can actually be painful.
Oh, so?
Well, that world on screen makes sense. People communicate clearly. Problems are, generally solvable. It feels fake. It feels hollow because your personal reality feels like an absolute nightmare.
But if you watch The Thing, Or Hereditary.
You see a protagonist who is just as confused and terrified and overwhelmed as you are. The film looks you right in the eye and it says, yes, you are right. The world is dangerous, the rules are broken, chaos is real.
It validates the insanity of the experience that makes you feel less crazy because you're seeing that internal chaos externalized on a screen.
Exactly. It's a profound validation of a shattered worldview. But there's a second layer to this, a second reason it's so useful, and it's all about structure. The paper dives into this really interesting kind of philosophical debate.
Right, this was the narrative debate.
Yeah, between two philosophers, Peter Goldie and Matthew Ratcliffe, about the nature of grief itself. So Goldie's position is that grief is a narrative. He thinks it has a structure, a beginning, a middle, a process of unfolding over time. It's a story we tell ourselves about loss.
And Radcliffe. Yeah. He had a different take.
Ratcliffe disagrees, and pretty vehemently. He argues that real deep grief is the total absence of narrative. He says grief is just static, it's a fog, it's non-linear, it doesn't have chapters or a plot, it just has pain, often in a repeating, looping way.
I have to say, I think I side with Ratcliffe on that one. When you are in the thick of it, it doesn't feel like a story with an arc. It feels like you're just stuck in a loop.
I think most people who've been there would agree with you, and that is why Ratcliffe argues that we have to use narrative as a tool. We don't find the story in the grief, we have to impose a story onto the grief in order to survive it.
Okay, so we need to find a story to put our feelings into.
Precisely. And this brings us to another researcher, Kathleen Higgins, and her concept of containment.
Containment, this is the idea of the box. Right?
Peak of a horror movie is a very sophisticated, very safe box. It has a runtime, it starts at 7:30 and it ends at 9:55. It has a beginning, a middle with the scares, and an end, a resolution. It is a container for high arousal, difficult emotions.
So if I'm walking around with this nebulous, foggy, terrifying grief that has no edges, no end in sight, and I sit down to watch the dreadful.
You are taking that nebulous, formless emotion, and you are pouring it into the container. For 90 minutes or 2 hours, you can let those feelings run wild. You can scream, you can cry, you can feel your heart hammer against your ribs like it's trying to get out.
You're doing it within a structure that has a guaranteed exit strategy.
Yes. The credits will roll, the lights will come up, you will walk out of the theater.
It's safe, you can visit the chaos, but you don't have to live there permanently.
Higgins argues that this process allows us to regulate the emotion. If you just sit alone in your room and cry, it can feel bottomless, like it will never stop. But if you cry because a character on screen is being chased by a ghost, there is a boundary to it, it's focused.
It reminds me of that C.S. Lewis quote that the paper leads with, from his book, A Grief Observed.
Oh, it's such a perfect quote for this. No one ever told me that grief felt so like fear.
It's such a visceral, physical observation. We tend to think of grief as sadness, which we imagine as like heavy and slow. But fear is fast. Fear is sharp and electric.
And Lewis was noting the physiology of it, the tightness in your throat, the fluttering stomach, the restlessness, the inability to sit still, the constant yawning. The body in a state of grief is in a state of high alert, just like a body in a state of fear.
So the horror movie isn't just a psychological match, it's a physiological match.
It matches the somatic experience, the felt sense in your body. And for some people, as another study points out, grief doesn't even manifest as sadness or fear. It manifests as numbness. You just feel dead inside. Flat.
I've heard that from so many people. You expect to be wailing and crying, but you're just nothing. Empty.
And that is terrifying in its own way. So in that case, horror can act as a kind of jump start. It is a high arousal genre by design. It forces your autonomic nervous system to react. You have to feel the fear. You startle. Your pulse spikes.
The jump scare can literally jolt you back into your body.
For a numb person, that sudden jolt of feeling, even if it's fear, can be a profound relief. It's proof of life. It's like, oh, okay, I can still feel something.
I scare, therefore I am.
In a way, yes. And because you have the remote control, or you can literally get up and walk out of the theater, you have the one thing that profound grief steals from you.
Agency.
Agency. Control. You control the dose of the fear, which makes it rewarding instead of traumatic.
Okay, so this is a fantastic framework. We have the assumptive world, we have the narrative container, and we have the physiological jumpstart. Now, I want to take these tools and apply them to the actual media that's hitting us right now in 2026.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the slate, it's like these filmmakers intuitively get this. Let's start with Hokum.
Hokum, releasing May 1st. This one is directed by Damian McCarthy.
The buzz on this is really fascinating. I've seen some early reviews calling it a masterpiece of atmosphere.
Yeah.
But let's just look at the plot description through the lens we just built.
It's almost too perfect, isn't it? It's like a textbook example.
It really is. The protagonist is a horror writer, so we're already in a metaspace. And he travels to a remote Irish inn for one reason: to scatter his parents' ashes.
Stop right there. The inciting incident of the film is an explicit ritual of grief. He is trying to perform a narrative act. His script is, I will go to this place, I will scatter the ashes, and I will find closure. He is trying to use a standard grief story to fix his broken assumptive world.
And because it's a horror movie, the script is destined to fail.
The script fails spectacularly. The inn, of course, is steeped in strange local lore, and it's rumored to be haunted by a witch. His very personal, private quest for closure spirals into what the press notes call supernatural chaos.
The visuals that are being described, eerie landscapes bathed in shadowy light, that feels very specific to the folk horror subgenre.
It is, and folk horror is a unique beast when it comes to dealing with grief. In a lot of folk horror, the landscape itself is the monster. The past isn't just a memory. It's buried in the mud, it's in the trees, it's in the water.
And for a grieving person, that must resonate, because grief can feel environmental. It's not just in your head. It feels like the whole world around you is haunted by the loss.
That's a great way to put it. And Higgins, in the source material, she has this beautiful, really haunting point she makes about the archetype of the ghost. She talks about the nebulousness of the deceased.
The nebulousness. What does she mean by that?
It's one of the most profound insights in the whole stack. When you lose someone really close to you, they are gone, but they are also not gone. You still see them in their favorite armchair. You hear their footsteps on the stairs. They have a kind of palpable weight in their very absence.
They're simultaneously everywhere and nowhere.
Exactly. Higgins argues that the ghost archetype in film is a literalization of that impossible feeling. A ghost is an entity that is both present and absent at the same time. It has an epistemic advantage. It knows things we don't, specifically about death. And it's emotionally estranged.
So when the protagonist in Hokum is in this Irish inn, dealing with whatever entities are there, he is basically enacting a metaphor for the profound confusion of loss.
He's wrestling with the central question of grief. Where are they now? The supernatural elements force him to confront a reality that doesn't make any sense, which perfectly mirrors the internal struggle of trying to accept that his parents are just gone.
And by watching him fight the witch, or confront the ghost, or untangle the lore,
we, the audience, are practicing. We are watching someone navigate that same nebulousness. It gives a physical form to a formless feeling. If the ghost is just a sad feeling in your head, you can't fight it. But if the ghost is a witch in an Irish inn, well, now you can run, you can hide, you can fight back. It makes the problem tangible.
which is infinitely more satisfying than just staring at a wall feeling sad and overwhelmed.
It creates a target for the emotion.
Yeah.
And that brings us perfectly to the second film we need to talk about, which handles the monster of the past in a very different, much more visceral way. The one dropping this Friday. The Dreadful.
The big one. The main event. Sophie Turner, Kit Harington, the big Game of Thrones reunion.
It's very clever casting, isn't it? We already have a history with these two faces. We associate them with enduring trauma, with survival, with the harshness of the North. But this film is stripping away all the fantasy elements and going for something much, much grittier.
It's set in the 15th century, during the Wars of the Roses in England. Sophie Turner plays a woman named Anne. She and her mother-in-law, played by the great Marcia Gay Harden, are living as outcasts on the fringes of society.
And that setting is crucial here. The Wars of the Roses was a time of absolute grinding chaos. Dynasties were falling. There was constant violence. The entire assumptive world of England was broken. There was no stability.
And Anne is just trying to survive on the fringe of all that. And then Kit Harington's character, Jago, shows up, a man from their past who brings all that chaos right to their doorstep.
This is pure Gothic horror. If folk horror is about the land being haunted, Gothic horror is about the return of the repressed. It's about your personal past, your personal history, coming back to haunt you in the present.
So Jago isn't just the guy showing up. He's a walking, talking trigger.
He is a walking trauma response. His arrival triggers a cascade of events that the production notes describe in some pretty intense ways. Sophie Turner gave that one interview where she talked about a specific scene with Kit.
I remember this. She said it was so intense that they were both retching after the takes.
Retching. That is a strong physical reaction. That implies something beyond just psychological fear. It suggests body horror or deep, visceral disgust.
And this connects right back to the original paradox of horror premises. Why on earth would we want to watch something that makes us want to literally throw up?
Premise 2. Disgust is an unpleasant emotion. But remember that C.S. Lewis quote, "Grief felt so like fear." Grief is physical. It's a punch to the gut. It can make you physically sick. Sometimes the quiet sadness of a traditional drama just isn't enough to capture the sheer violence of loss. Sometimes you need the disgust. You need the retching.
It validates the ugliness of it. Grief isn't always poetic and beautiful. Sometimes it's just bile and ugliness.
Precisely. And by seeing that feeling externalized on screen, by watching Sophie Turner react with that level of visceral physical horror, it matches the internal reality of the viewer who feels like their life has turned ugly and disgusting.
But there's also the element of safety here. The container again, but in different form.
Yes, this is a period piece. It's the 1400s. That creates a significant temporal distance.
We aren't worried about the Lancasters and the Yorks kicking down our doors in 2026.
Right, it provides a safe container. We can explore these universal, terrifying themes of isolation, of violence, of the past returning to destroy the present, but we get to do it in costumes. We do it in a world that is clearly and safely not now. That distance allows us to get closer to the core emotion without being burned by its modern-day relevance.
So Hokum uses the distance of folklore and superstition, and The Dreadful uses the distance of history.
They are both scaffolds. They are structures designed to hold the weight of these difficult emotions so we don't have to carry it all ourselves.
But then we have the third item in our stack, and this is the one that really worries me, because it doesn't feel distant at all. It feels like it's breathing down our necks.
You are talking about Paul Tremblay.
I'm talking about Dead but Dreaming of Electric Sheep. This book drops in June, and unlike the other two, this isn't looking back at the past. It's looking straight into the very near future.
This is tech horror. And tech horror operates on a different axis because it attacks the assumptive world of what's coming next.
And the premise is, well, it's just wild. It's described as Weekend at Bernie's meets William Gibson's The Peripheral.
A combination that only Paul Tremblay could possibly cook up.
So the setup is this. In the near future, we have developed the technology to integrate AI directly into the bodies of people who are in a persistent vegetative state. This allows their body to be essentially remote controlled by a pilot.
It's the Uberization of the human vessel, a body as a service.
And the protagonist, a woman named Julia, is a gamer who is trained to be one of these pilots, to control one of these bodies. Now, Tremblay says explicitly in the interview that this was inspired by two things. One, Mary Roach's incredible book, Stiff, which details the long, often bizarre history of how we've used human cadavers.
Which is, at its core, a history of objectification, of turning a person into a thing.
And two, and this is the kicker for me, it was inspired by his own deep anxiety over the class action lawsuits filed against OpenAI regarding copyright back in 2023.
There it is. That's the connection. Think about what that lawsuit represented, especially for an author. It was the primal fear that your life's work, your voice, your mind, your very essence, was being scraped, chopped up, and repurposed by a machine without your consent or compensation.
The ultimate loss of agency.
A total loss of agency. So, in Dead But Dreaming, he takes that intellectual fear and he makes it gruesomely physical. It's not just his words being scraped anymore, it's the human body itself being scraped and used as a tool. It's the ultimate horror that we are all just meat for the algorithm to use.
And this connects to a really specific point Tremblay makes about math, of all things. He had a master's degree in mathematics, which I had absolutely no idea about.
I didn't either until I read this interview. It reframes his work.
He has this quote where he says, "Math illiterates are using math to ruin the world." He talks about the rise of predictive analytics and things like sports. The idea that we now value the computer's projection of the game more than we value the actual game being played.
This is a profound and terrifying disruption of the assumptive world. Our assumption is that reality is what actually happens. Tremblay is arguing that we are rapidly moving into a world where the model is considered the reality and what actually happens is just a glitch, an error in the data.
So if the algorithm says your team is supposed to lose and you win, the algorithm isn't wrong, you are. Your victory is the mistake.
Exactly. And now apply that same chilling logic to the human body. If the algorithm says this person is vegetative, therefore they are no longer a person, they are a resource, then that becomes the functional truth. The horror here isn't a witch in a bog or a knight from the past. It's the quiet, bureaucratic acceptance of the truly absurd.
He talks about the normality of it all being the real horror, the way the characters just go along to get along.
That is what he calls bystander trauma. Tremblay has always been more interested in the witnesses than the victims. He wants to explore what it does to our souls to witness these horrors and do nothing, to just click agree on the terms of service without reading them.
Oh, we're remote controlling grandma now because the EOLA said it would be more efficient. Oh, actually, that's the new update.
It's the banality of evil, updated for 2026. In Hokum and the Dreadful, the protagonists see the horror and they fight it. In Tremblay's world, the ultimate horror is that nobody fights it. They just integrate it into their daily lives.
That, to me, is scarier than all the retching and jump scares in the world.
It should be.
Yeah.
Because that monster isn't in a distant castle or a foggy bog. It's in your pocket. It's in the user agreement you didn't read this morning.
So, okay, let's try to synthesize this. Let's bring it all together. We have 3 very different flavors of horror on the table. We have the folk horror of Hokum, which is dealing with grief, memory, and place. We have the gothic horror of the Dreadful, dealing with history, trauma, and the return of the repressed. And then we have the tech horror of Dead But Dreaming, which deals with agency, humanity, and the fear of the future.
It's a pretty comprehensive map of our current cultural anxieties, really. Past, present, and future.
But if we go back to the original paper, to that idea of scaffolding, how do these all fit together? What is the ultimate utility for us, the audience?
The ultimate utility is integration. And to explain that, I want to go back to the key example the paper uses, which is the 2014 film The Babadook.
An absolute modern classic.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Truly. Now, if you haven't seen it, maybe cover your ears for 30 seconds. But the ending of The Babadook is basically the thesis statement for this entire deep dive we're doing today. The protagonist, Amelia, spends the whole movie being terrorized by this monster from a storybook.
And it's a very clear, very powerful metaphor for her unprocessed grief over her husband's violent death.
Exactly. She tries to deny it. She tries to burn the book. She tries to fight it and pretend it isn't real. And the more she denies it, the stronger and more violent it becomes. It almost destroys her and her son.
But how does the movie end?
She doesn't kill the Babadook. She can't. The film makes it clear that's impossible. You can't kill grief. You can't kill your past. It's a part of you.
She keeps it in the basement.
She corrals it, she screams it down, and she keeps it in the basement. And in the final scene, she goes down there, she brings it a bowl of earthworms, she acknowledges its presence, it screams and rages at her, she calms it down, and then she goes back upstairs to celebrate her son's birthday in the sunshine.
That image of her feeding the monster worms in the basement is so incredibly powerful. It's not about getting over it.
No, getting over it is a pernicious myth. The assumptive world, once it's been shattered, it cannot be glued back together exactly the way it was. You have to build a new world. And that new world has to be one that includes the monster in the basement, one that acknowledges the trauma.
So the function of these films, whether it's Sophie Turner confronting Jago or Adam Scott facing the witch in the inn, is to teach us how to go into the basement and feed the worms.
That's it exactly. These stories are simulations. They're practice runs. We go to the theater to practice that welcome stance. We invite the fear in, we sit with it, we learn its contours, we survive it, and then we leave. We are exercising the psychological muscle of integration.
We're building the scaffold in a safe space so that when the real grief hits, or the real trauma shows up in our lives, we know that the basement isn't the end of the world. It's just another room in the house.
A room you have to visit from time to time, but a room you can also leave. A room you can learn to manage.
That is strangely, deeply hopeful. For a conversation that's been about witches and vegetative AI and retching.
I would argue that horror is the most hopeful genre we have, because at its core, it assumes that survival is possible. It assumes that even when the world breaks completely, you can keep going, you can endure.
Because it acknowledges the monster. And acknowledging it is always the first step to dealing with it.
Precisely. Denial just makes the Babadook stronger. The book always comes back, thicker and scarier, if you try to burn it.
So here is the challenge for you listening today. As we head into this massive weekend of horror, the marketing, the trailers, they're all going to be telling you to go get scared, go for the thrill, go for the jump scare. And you should. It's fun. But I want to challenge you to take it a step deeper.
Engage that welcome stance consciously.
And ask yourself,
Yeah.
what is currently living in your basement? What's the grief or the fear or the memory that you have been trying to keep the door locked on?
What part of your own assumptive world has been shattered that you've been trying to pretend is still intact?
And maybe, just maybe, Watching Sophie Turner face her demons in the 15th century or reading about Julia navigating the absurd horror of the near future will give you the permission you need to open that door just a crack
To look it in the eye,
and feed it some worms.
but do it safely. Use the container of the story.
Exactly. Keep the lights on if you have to. Go check out The Dreadful this Friday. Look out for Hokum when it arrives in May. And definitely keep an eye on Paul Tremblay's new Nightmare when it comes out in June.
And maybe, read the terms of service every once in a while.
Please, for the love of God, read the terms of service. Thank you for diving deep with us today.
Stay scared. It's good for you.
We'll see you next time.